Okay, so if you look at the text here, it says, "What good is it, my brothers, if someone claims to have faith but has no deeds?" Now, notice what he says there. Does this thing have a laser on it? If someone claims to have faith but has no deeds. So, if you claim to have faith, you are saying something about yourself, right? And you are saying that you have this thing called faith. And James is looking at a particular kind of person who says this about themselves, but who has no deeds that correspond to the faith, okay? And then he asks the question, can such faith save him? What kind of faith? It's a nominal faith. I have faith, but I don't have works. He's asking about that. He's asking about that kind of faith, a faith that has no works. Okay? He's not asking about faith per se, but a faith that has no works. And he goes on to illustrate what he means by a faith with works. He says, suppose a brother or sister is without clothes and daily food. If one of you tells him, go in peace, stay warm, and be well fed, but does not provide for his physical needs, what good is that? Notice, what good is it? What good is that? Picking back up on that idea. Then he says, so too, faith by itself, if not accompanied by works or action, is dead. Mortus est fides is what the medievals called it. Dead faith. And he's talking about that specific kind of faith here. He says, for someone will say, you have faith, but I have deeds. Show me your faith without deeds, and I will show you my faith by my deeds. What I would like to do today, just very briefly, is help you think about the nature of the relationship between the deeds and the faith, which give rise to those deeds, okay? So, I'm going to start out having you contrast some beliefs. If you look up there, I don't know if you could read that box. It says, some beliefs can stay concealed in the mind. They're only revealed when verbalized. Other beliefs, by their very nature, reveal themselves in your actions. Okay, so let's think about this. Oh, you definitely can't see that. My PowerPoint had a black backdrop. I don't know what happened. Well, I can't even see it here either. So, the dangers of PowerPoints, kids, learn this lesson. What that says up there is, if I remember correctly, it says, hey, look at that. Okay. Never thought PowerPoints could be so much fun. So it says, my house faces north. Now, that is a belief I have. I have the belief that my house faces north. You would never know that unless I told you, okay? Or unless you went to my house and figured it out yourself. But that's the kind of belief that could stay in my head and you would never know it until I declared it to you, okay? The next one is, you can go ahead and shrink it back. Thank you. The next one is, my house is on fire. Now think about this. Let's say, for the sake of illustration, that I really believe that claim right now. Do you think I would be here talking to you? No. That's the kind of belief that necessarily plays itself out in action, right? My belief that my house faces north doesn't spill out in my behavior. It just stays in my mind. And that's fine. And if you want to know if I believe which direction my house faces, you would ask me. But if I told you my house is on fire and I'm just sitting here chill, what are you going to infer about me? I don't really believe it, right? Because if I believed it, I'm going to act. That's the kind of belief on which one acts. Next, What does that say? I think it says, my dresser drawer has, no, it doesn't. See, dresser drawers, nephews, I don't know. I have 6 nephews. Again, it's a belief that's in my mind, and you would never know it unless I declared it to you. The next one is, I have 6 weeks to live. That kind of claim, again, would play itself out in action, correct? You knew that you only had 6 weeks to live, that's going to be a game changer for you. Down below, it says I'm from Baltimore. Same thing. Bottom left, right there. Bottom left, sorry. I'm from Baltimore. You would not know that unless I told it to you. The other one, though, says, I love... Oh my goodness, this is not working. The other one says, I love the Ravens. That's right. Oh, PowerPoints. Yeah, it's not responding. Can you just go ahead and click that one for me? Hey, there you go. There's Lamar. Breaking some ankles. Now, if I say I love the Ravens, that's the kind of claim you're going to, again, expect to see lived out. You see me wearing my Ravens jersey. I made the extra effort to go find an image of Lamar breaking ankles. Why? Because I love the Ravens. That's a kind of belief that plays itself out. Now, how many of you have not seen this movie? Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Raise your hands if you've not seen it. Okay. So for those of you who've not seen it, Indy, here's a picture of Indiana, and that's his father, Indiana Jones Sr. Indy, as you may know, is an archaeologist who goes on adventures. His father is also an archaeologist, not quite so adventuresome though. And his father has dedicated his whole life to finding the Holy Grail. If you find the Holy Grail, you drink from the Holy Grail, it gives you healing powers, gives you eternal life. And his father has researched this and come up with clues and whatnot, and has finally come to the conclusion that the Holy Grail's back in that cave there somewhere. Okay? Well, Indy is a bit of a skeptic. He's never really kind of bought into his father's beliefs about the Holy Grail. But the guy across from them is a Nazi. You've always got to have a Nazi in the Indy stories. And the Nazi does believe in the Holy Grail. Now, they're at an impasse because to get to the Holy Grail, you have to go through this gauntlet of booby traps through the cave. And people have tried getting in there, and they're all getting killed by it. So what the Nazi decides to do is to shoot Indy's father and then tell Indy, if you want to save your father, you got to go get it. And so what he says there in the yellow is, it's time, listen to this, it's time to find out what you believe, Mr. Jones. It's time to find out what you believe, Mr. Jones. Notice he doesn't say, hey, do you believe there's a Holy Grail back there? You could just ask him, do you think there's a Holy Grail? And he could say yes, no, maybe so. He doesn't ask him what he believes because he knows what? Yeah, if he really thinks there's a Holy Grail back there, he's going to go. He's going to go. That's the kind of belief that's going to be acted on, just like my house being on fire, having 6 weeks of life left, etc. Okay? His father's dying. If he gets the Holy Grail, he comes back, gives the drink to the father, heals the father, right? So it's time to find out what he believes by his actions. That's the point. Now, what sort of belief is the following proposition? Is it one that can stay concealed in the mind and known only when verbalized? Or one that reveals itself by our actions? And the proposition up there in the yellow, which you can't see, is Jesus is the divine Messiah and the Son of God. That's the proposition. My question to you guys is that the kind of belief that can just stay concealed in the mind? Is it more like the belief that I have 6 nephews, or my house faces north, which can stay in my head and you would never know it unless I told you? Or is it more like my house is on fire and I have 6 weeks to live? Where if I believed it, you would know it, not because I said it, but because I live it. You see what I'm saying? Jesus says the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in the field. What you see up there is a jar with coins. This was uncovered by archaeologists. This goes back to the Roman Empire era. They didn't have banks back then. So if you had a stash of coins, you would put it into a jar and you would bury it on your property to keep it from being stolen. And Jesus is talking about that. He's talking about treasure that's buried in a field. Some rich person has loaded up their real estate with hidden treasure. And then he says, when a man found it, he hid it again, and in his joy he went and sold all he had and bought that field. So guys, in the field, he sees it. He wants to know who owns this. He puts it back in the ground and says, I'll give you, X number of dollars for this. And this man knows that if he gives up his every last penny to get this field, he's going to get a huge return on his investment. So he goes and he gives everything to the owner. And the owner doesn't realize there's treasure in his field. And he gets the field, and now he is rich beyond belief, right? He's given everything for it. It's an investment. An investor's degree of confidence is revealed by where and how much he invests. If you look at that, it's called a portfolio. And you see the dollars in the different envelopes. And what that's representing there is the investor is spreading out his or her wealth across these different investments. That's called diversifying your investments, your funds. Okay? Why is he diversifying all of his money? Why invest? Let's talk about companies. Why invest in a little bit in one company A, a little bit more in company B, a little bit more in company C, as opposed to just investing everything in the company A? Why? Yeah. What happens if company A fails? You don't know. You researched it. You think company A is looking pretty strong, but you don't know if it's going to succeed. Back in the mid-90s, Google was just a little startup company in someone's basement. 2 guys in a basement. Man, if I had known then what I know now, can you imagine having invested everything into Google back in 1995? You'd be so rich, right? But you don't know. So you diversify your funds across all these different investments. And notice, guys, wherever you put your money, you're revealing your beliefs. You're revealing that you think this company has enough strengths to do well and to give you a kickback. So you invest in them, right? Why is this guy going all in at the poker table? What'd you say, Charlotte? He's calculated, most likely if he's a professional poker player, he's doing calculations, and he's calculated that most likely he has the winning hand. And he's going in, or he could be bluffing, but anyway, he's going all in because he's confident. This would be like the investor who puts it all in one company, all the eggs in one basket, right? Notice, guys, there are some beliefs on which you act. I've already established that. And here's the next point. Some beliefs you have with greater confidence than others. If you're an investor and you believe that company A is looking good, company B is looking good, company C is looking good, but you're not confident that any one of them is really going to take off, you diversify your funds. But what if you are absolutely certain that company A was the next Google? What are you going to do? You're going all in. Right? You're going all in. This is a picture of a great man, Jim Elliot. When he was in high school, he was a phenomenal student, athlete. I've read his story. All the girls loved this guy, right? And he had all these things that a lot of young men wish they had. One thing he had that a lot of young men don't have is great confidence in the gospel of Jesus Christ. He had tremendous confidence that Jesus was who Jesus said he was. And he knew that the identity of Jesus is not something that can just sit in your mind as a proposition to which you give assent. It requires a response. If you believe Jesus is the Savior and Lord of the world, you can't let that belief just sit idly in your mind. You must respond on it by definition, just like the proposition that your house is on fire. But Eliot had tremendous confidence, certainty that this proposition was true. And so he went all in. He gave it all up. He threw everything into one basket, and he went off to reach an unreached tribe, a violent tribe. He and some other men who also went all in, and they lost their lives. Some of you may know this story. They made contact with these people and were initially greeted. They came back a second time, and they were all massacred by spears. And Jim Elliot, Nick Saint, others, their families went back and reached these people and converted the tribe. It's a beautiful story. I would encourage you to read it sometime. But he has this quote. I'll try to read it without crying because I always get teary when I think about this. He is no fool who gives what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose. If Eliot is right about Jesus Christ, then he was right to go all in. I am here, and your teachers are here, to convince you that Eliot is right. That Jesus Christ is who he said he was. And that he's calling you to give it all up, to buy that treasure in the field. And to trust that you are going to get dividends beyond your wildest imagination. It doesn't mean going into the mission field. It means loving the Lord your God with your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself, wherever you find yourself. You can be an electrician and be all in. You can be a musician and be all in. If you're all in, you're going to follow him through thick and through thin in all the little things. You're going to be faithful in the little things. And so that's my encouragement to you guys. As you go home this Christmas break, find time to think about these things and ask yourself, like that Nazi asked Jones, what do you believe? Ask yourself, what do I believe? It's time to find out what I really believe.